let's welcome in Freak to the broadcast. Freak, welcome. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm good. I will say today has been, less America's dominated than yesterday. So, a little sad about that. Apparently, Pasty might have been the good luck charm, but no, I'm really excited to be here. I was stoked when I got the offer to cast some of LOR World. So, really excited that hopefully, we get some good results again.
Ooh, it's gonna be spicy, and especially when you consider how many players from the Americas actually have already made it to
Yeah,
the
three for
final
three.
day. I think we're gonna see some shakeups today, or at least maybe I'm hoping for some shakeups today. But let's go ahead and talk about the next match that we've got on hand. And Panda, I'm just gonna go ahead and let you take it.
We have Majinbae versus Kevin. So Freak, happily enough, there's going to be one America's winner in this match. I think that's the result you wanted. So you will be getting it here. But Majinbae has to come back from what was, I think, a demoralizing loss. He's a favorite going into the tournament. He was in my top three, I think, regardless of region. Just a very strong player overall the past year in Runeterra. And having a play like that where it was just a timer issue where you knew the right play just didn't have the time to do it, to execute. Same with Real Key yesterday with the spacebar pass. It is demoralizing and it does affect your mental game. So we'll see if he comes back into it strongly and has a good showing right now.
Right, yeah, he's one of very very few players who actually got 2-0'd. Most of the results end up going to 3 games. Of course, being a round robin group stage, individual game score matters here, and so you'll very frequently, if you lose game one, you know the second matchup, and so you'll play the strongest deck you have into that matchup, the stronger of your two that's unbanned. And so often we see, the loser of game one will pull that game two, and then, see the last one goes. But yeah, Majin couldn't pull back either one, though, so, off to a really rough start. Kevin, meanwhile, I think he's looked good. His Silver Oxygen was banned the first time around, and came back from a game one loss to fuel the rush to get the rest of it going through, beating out Shihu. So it's looking good. Obviously, we had Real Key get through yesterday from Brazil, so Kevin gonna kind of hope he can keep that one going, go 2 for 2 for Brazilian players, which would be obviously really exciting there. Obviously, their honorary Brazilian and Artifi is out, but still pulled one through for Real Key, so a homie nonetheless.
I think for Kevin, he had some minor slip-ups in his series with the Sharp Sight and the Sunburst and, some concentration stuff. I think he knows what the card does. He's a very good player. He's here for a reason, but sometimes you just lose focus for a bit and you get punished for it in some cases. In his case, he still won the series, so he's happy about the result, but maybe I think he knows he can play better. He can show up a little bit better to this series, and again, I think it's going to be a mental game for both of these players coming into it.
Absolutely, and as you kind of get into the game, obviously you set yourself up. One of the nice things about a format like this is you have a lot of time to know who your opponent is and what those decks are. Like, the 9 decks you're against in your group, and you can spend a little bit more time, ensuring you know what the ban is, like spending time like figuring out the Nash Equilibrium for a ban strategy or a game one strategy for like what deck you bring out. In this case, those 3 decks are all, as far as I can tell, garbage against Draven Scion. So we're pretty sure Kevin's going to be banning Draven Scion, and then the other half of it you start paying more attention to. It's a little bit closer as far as Majin's choice of ban, but yeah, I mean, I think you really want to come out game one swinging.
If Kevin set out, 5 hours to think about lineups and bans, in 5 minutes he already knew what his ban was against Majin, because it's just so obvious. I think Draven Scion has very, very good matchups against all 3 of his decks. Looking at Majinbae's lineup, very strong lineup. We're seeing it all tournament long. Draven Scion and Nami Zoe, the 2 big, strong decks of the current tournament meta. And then we have the third deck that sometimes is TFGP, but in this case it's going to be the Lulu, Poppy, Annual City Rally deck that is also just very, very strong. Put up great results yesterday. Yeah. We saw even Aikado with the elusive version of the deck still putting up great results. And with this Annual City version, cards like Yordle and Arms, I know Mogwai, I heard him being very high on the card, and it's for a reason. It just has a very impactful effect.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really, really good deck. I'm a big fan of Demacia Rally deck. That's kind of like my preferred archetype. If I was to have one of those cards, like what would my preferred champion be? And
You're one of those, huh? Okay.
It would be Relentless Pursuit. Would be that. That said, though, what's interesting is the innovation has not tended to work well. I know you mentioned Aikado's Rally deck. He is 1 and 3 on it, despite being one of the players who went through. It actually did not suit him very well that the elusive count, because they're all 1 health units, is sadly, right? So we have a really heavy Make It Rain. Like, even Parlay's getting used because there's multiple copies of Gangplank and all the Pokesticks. That it turns out that these 2 ones that buff up, the Green Glade duos and everything, like, those cards just tends to die pretty frequently, like, interestingly enough. So yeah, and that's like part of the meta call as well, is since the qualifiers like Ping City's been showing up, people will write it as Gangplank Bandle City or anything like this, but yeah, it turns out there's a lot of decks that just deal 1 damage, so that's part of the meta game that you have to play around. And obviously Ranger's Resolve does really well, but there's more of those than there are ranges resolves. So you still have to kind of play around this kind of stuff. And it makes it just kind of interesting, kind of figuring out your decks, what you're going on for. We are in a very mid-range focused metagame. There's like the one Feel the Rush coming through from Shihu. We've got a Heimerdinger deck coming in as well. So there's a little bit that's outside the metagame, but it's a lot of really unit-based, sort of value-focused strategies.
And the ban will be Dravenstein, as we talked about. I think that was a pretty obvious one, but in the case of Kevin's lineup, it's going to be Sivir, Akshan not showing up here, not being allowed to go through. It's going to be Plunder and the Poppy Rally deck coming in.
That's interesting. Yeah, I know you had sent me a nice screenshot of matchup tables. You had done a bunch of extra prep for the matchups, so I was like, oh, I want to do that one myself. Great. And it, like, looking at this, it was actually a pretty close call between banning Lulu Bandle City or banning Sivir Akshan. Like the same good matchups are the same, and the same bad matchups are the same pretty much. So you could kind of go in either way. He chooses to go for Sivir Akshan. I think he finds that the specific parts of the list aren't quite as good. Obviously, in another case, you just got a mirror matchup. So hey, we're gonna see Lulu play itself. Hey, no one's surprised about how that matchup's going to go. It's going to be who draws and plays it better. But yeah, as far as finding game number one, Plunder is going to have the best overall matchup table, I believe. So if you're looking to strike out in game one, that's probably what Kevin picks.
And the biggest thing I think with deciding which one to ban is also not just looking at the matchup tables, but looking at the general power level the deck can get to. If it draws the right cards in the right order and it just pops off with its game plan, how high of a power level can it be in a vacuum? And Sivir Akshan is a deck that is very scary when everything works well for it. And the value you can get from Sivir, from Cataclysms, from the landmark popping off and having Akshan on curve is very high.
All right, well, looks like we got Poppy and Rally and Range Resolve and Sith3 of the Bold up against Nami. Known as Starfish as well, if you want to go for that option. Yeah, both decks are going to end up getting pretty wide and then buffing up a lot of these really cheap weenies. You've got 0 mana to an elusive there with the Burble Fish. You've got a ton of token generation here on the other side. So, do your important cards stick? And if so, do they get big enough that they overwhelm you?
And right away, an elusive coming in early on for Kevin is great against a deck that is trying to push damage with elusives. The sharp sight being used so early on is maybe not what Kevin was hoping for. And also to kind of mention, Kelp Maidens is not a card you tend to see in this deck. It's usually Bandle Commando for the most part. So a different version of the deck that Kevin is bringing here. It offers kind of the prank synergy as well. And just something that we haven't seen this often in this tournament.
And he spots a combat trick, right? Gets the Pale Cascade, puts it to 4 mana, and says, all right, well, not only do you have to probably get Nightfall to turn on, because you want to draw a card off this, but it's going to cost 4 as well, so we're going to make it awkward for you. Like, right now, it's already inactive. Good job getting Nami to pop on curve. It's always good when you can, finagle your cards into level 4, play Nami, she's level 2, okay, let's go. And obviously, you're not looking at a lot of target removal out of Bandle City Demacia, not for 4 health, so you get a little bit of breathing room. But, yeah, you're trying to figure out, okay, great. We managed to turn our Sparkle Flame into a 3/3, and this is, one of the best opening 4 rounds you can probably have for this deck.
Exactly. Especially when you don't play Double Trouble. It's something that is great, especially against a deck like these rally decks that do want to go wide, you do want to have blockers. But there's the upside of when you don't play it, all the buffs are going to go to the Sparklefly. If your opponent doesn't have interaction, you've seen one sharp sight wasted already. If you get the Sparklefly big enough, it can be an enormously difficult thing to deal with for Kevin and his list. He doesn't have things like Concerted Strike, obviously, he doesn't have things like Soul Combat. It's not the kind of deck that you're running, even though you're running Demacia. So if the Sparklefly gets big enough, the Kelp Maidens with the 2/1 stat line is not really going to do much to stop it.
Now, speaking of stat lines getting bigger, though, I do want to point out the fact that the one of Hush in Majinbae's list was revealed by the initial prank. And I know this is something I've heard you and all the other cast talk about in any tournament format. One-ofs are so powerful because you can't realistically play around one-ofs because odds are they don't draw it. But in the back of your head, it's still there. Like 3 one-ofs, one of them you probably have, but you can't play on any one individually versus like a 3 of 1 card. But seeing it off prank, you're like, okay, I know, by the way, if I ever really go all in, if I have to double sharp sight a Lulu or something, it's like, well, I know they have a 3-mana Hush that they can use to stop this.
And that's the big thing with prank. People think about, the mana debuff, having something cost 2 more, or the, effects on the units, but the information game and the especially at this high level, having that information is so clutch and so vital, and it's definitely going to help Kevin understand what his opponent's hands look like and what things to play around or not play into at least.
And you get some more generated cards. So, okay, Shakedown. Honestly, not horrible. I actually saw Shakedown get value yesterday. when it got generated off of Burblefish, so you can sometimes feel something good out of this one. Obviously, there isn't a good answer right now to the buffed and buffed and buffed Sparklefly. Healing for 7 every round means you're not really worried about getting run down. Scyther can come down with, the range of resolve for coverage, but you're still losing Lulu or someone to the Sparklefly, and it's not going to be lethal, especially with only 1 mana showing for a combat trick. You're not worried about almost anything on the other side.
The shakedown is kind of nuts at dragging the Kelp Maiden out of the way. I'm not saying we're going to see lethal turn, because there can be a sharp sight. Obviously, Majinbae does not know what Kevin's hand looks like. He's not going to go all in into a certain game plan, but it's a lot of damage. He has a lot of spell backup here. Nami is completely healthy and completely safe in the back line. 6 spell mana to work with, and double Sparklefly and Burblefish on the board. So this could be a big swing here for Majin.
Yeah, I just want to see how many units he wants to protect, because you could like, I'm not saying you really want to ping your Nami for 2 and have to heal it back up right away off the card, but it would let the rest of your elusives go through. Is there a way to get lethal? Because I'm looking at spell count, and you can get 3 spells off, so add 6 damage. You're 1 off lethal, I think.
I think you have to go for it. I think getting Nami damage in this matchup is not really super important, because there isn't obviously any kind of spell that's going to deal damage in this matchup. It's just units and forcing you to block because of the pressure more than anything. And I think this is the right play. You're going to use Nami to take damage. The 2 damage on Nami doesn't matter unless you're trying to block and survive on the next turn. And maybe control the board a bit, because if you're not going to get lethal, you want to try and at least stop your opponent's game plan enough so you can get lethal on the next turn. On the next turn you're attacking. But it's still, I think, very clutch card to get the shakedown there generated, and at least to clear the elusive out of the way and hit with the 7/3 Sparklefly.
Yeah, worth noting, no concerted strike. Again, sharp sight can exist, sure, it's 3 of, but actually goes to right. Obviously, doesn't go to maximize health, because again, Kevin would be at 1 HP if you spent all the spells you could to buff up the elusive, so that's not going to come through. Doesn't decide to trade down the entire board, does leave up a Bladesmith, so going to be kind of chilling for a bit.
The Serpent here with Lulu is going to be effective. That is actually one way to remove things. Scyther coming down is scary. There is a Hush available if you want to use it. There's a Super School Charge Chart to get possible Crescent Strike. We see it here to stop both the Lulu and the Scythria. And Majin has to feel happy about that one. No Serpent challenging the Nami. Nami is safe once again where she wants to be. And this is looking like a wrap to me.
Yeah, if you don't win this game, you are dying to the elusives. Rallying's not going to do probably enough. Like, okay, you've got a 1-attack Serpent that you can't get, you can't kill the elusives with it. Even if you rally, the damage on board is 9 each. You still don't care.
And even if you rally, you put in 1 Sparklefly at some point to heal for 10, and you're back up to 20. I mean, these are Targan. Targan used to do much crazier things in the Felios metas, in Lee Sin metas, in Eye of the Dragon metas. This deck doesn't abuse the healing as much, but still, with Sparklefly, we mentioned it. It started off as the only fish, and the other Sparklefly joined it, and it is just a healing machine at this point.
And hey, want to open attack? You look at it, there's almost no interaction. There's only combat tricks, no removal. So game 1 goes to Majinbae, his first game win of the top 16 of the World Championship. Needs to go 1 more to tie up that 1-1 scoreline. We'd have a pretty much tied up group if that comes through.
And we highlighted, I think, or I spoke about the sharp sight being used the second round of the game to save the Kelp Maidens from dying. And if it would have been in hand at any point in those big swings with the 7 attack Sparklefly attacking, that could have been huge to mitigate that damage, possibly kill it off, because obviously you can't really play around around Sharpsight. You have to attack and then see what happens. But it being used so early to save the Kelp Maidens, I think was probably a big detriment to Kevin's game plan in terms of surviving the elusive attacks.
All right, well, Kevin needs a game win and actually goes for the mirror matchup. So I want to sort of opine a little bit here. So based on matchup data that I have seen, especially that you have sent me, the most favored deck that Kevin has in this matchup is Plunder. It is slightly favored unless I'm misreading the matchup table. Actually, I might be. I realize I'm reading it from Majin's point of view and not Kevin's point of view. Okay, so
it's
yeah,
Majin is slightly favored against Plunder.
Right, so apologies on me misreading the matchup table as backwards, because I'm like looking at Kevin's point of view, but I'm reading data from... So yeah, a mirror match is the best odds Kevin has of a single game win, and then has like a 60-40, not in his favor for the second one, so it is a tough road ahead. But the best way you're going to get is trying to get this game in the coin flip, and then going from there.
And the biggest thing to look at in a mirror match is it, a true mirror match, or are there key differences in the decks? And that is the case in this matchup. Yordle and Arms, 2 copies of it in Majinbae's list. We talked about his, this card being very powerful throughout this entire tournament, and it could be the thing that gives him the edge. It's not currently in hand. The board is pretty depleted on Majin's side, which he does want to kind of work around that with a Poppy in hand to come down on turn 4 possibly. But Yordle and Arms could be a top deck that could, just really give him an enormous board on one turn. He can maybe capitalize on it twice with a Golden Aegis or Relentless Pursuit effect, and then just take over by winning the board. Because Demacia-based decks, especially rally decks, the whole game plan is winning the board and then capitalizing off that advantage with a second attack.
And the important thing is, we actually come down a couple rounds ago, because you mentioned that Yordles and Arms is the unique card on Majinbae's list, but also Yordle Squire is the unique card in Kevin's list, and you just saw him buff the tracker to a 2/2 and eat a free card. It's like, well, got all my challenges ready to go. I kept one of them alive off of a focus speed spell, and okay, yeah, gonna get dragged some here, especially with the quick attack making this really rough, but
yeah, this is a
getting
big
similar
swing.
freebies. Yeah, oh my gosh, a bunch of 3 attack quick attacks. Sharp Sight wouldn't be big enough on the one side. Thankfully, Poppy's too big to get quick attack from the Yordle Smith, and so it's a 2-for-1 trade. Like, I think he's overall down a card, but hopefully has reinforcements.
That being said, that's Majin's Poppy turn, but now it's Kevin's Poppy turn. This is how Mirror works most of the times. You take turns making these big plays when you have the attack token that benefits your champion and your game plan. And that being said, there's no quick attack. There's no, effect where you can get these clean trades. And there are going to be some cleanups here on Kevin's side. He's not going to be able to push that much damage or that much value off of the trades.
Yeah. Unless you really want a Sharp Sight to keep a Hawk alive, which doesn't really feel correct. Like, we can see from the hand state that there wouldn't be an answer to that. But unless you're trying to figure out something else you want to throw down to get eaten, obviously the biggest threats can all just be grabbed by the Fleet Feather trackers, so Poppy is never dying to any unit that Majinbae would play. Unless he, again, wants to say, hey, but if I have Sharp Sight, puts down a tenor or something and says, by the way, if I Sharp Sight, it kills Poppy. You can present some threat there. Oh, I like this. This is cute.
The Golden Aegis coming down onto the Fleet Feather tracker. Going to try and obviously force the attack here immediately from KevinLOR to get the Poppy out and the buff and the +1/+1 on all units. But the barrier makes that not look as appealing. And we're going to see the pass here instead. So this is a game of you wanted to attack. It's the whole game plan of your deck is play Poppy on curve, buff up other units, and attack. And with the challenge, you'll be able to control the board and the Yordle Smith as well. But this barrier stops that completely.
I mean, this is so interesting, right? Because obviously the read is like, well, okay, if I attack, Poppy becomes a 5/4. I can drag both units, and then Poppy survives the counter swing. Like, that's the initial, phase 1 thought process. Here he's saying, hey, if you go for it, I have range resolve or something. I have something. If you drag me, I'm gonna live anyway, and we're still gonna punch you afterwards. So says, go ahead and waste your barrier. Go ahead and try, and says, okay, I'll take the safe option. No, I'll go for Critical Poppy. Obviously, yeah, has the Sharp Sight, and no Sharp Sight in response means she gets to live as well as pop off the barrier for the counterpunch.
If she attacks now, though, she'll be at 3 health, and you can still, you can challenge both units, and that way Poppy just goes through uncontested, even though the health is lower, even though she had to block and took some damage in the process. 7 HP now for Majin. Poppy's still alive on KevinLOR's side, so he kind of won that trade with the Poppy wars between turns 4 and 5. And Majin has the hand to replenish his board, but he doesn't really have the payoff card. He doesn't have the second Poppy, doesn't have the Yordle in Arms to maybe capitalize on his next turn.
Yeah. What's so funny, I'm still playing that round back in my head because Kevin could have gotten almost the same results, but by playing it that way, he got 2 more face damage because he got the Sharp Sight on defense, then swing, instead of, swing for 5 and then live with the Sharp Sight. If that was actually the reason we're playing it that way, that's like Galaxy Brain.
I think it is, and I think it's him saying, I have a Sharp Sight. I know Majin is he can't resist taking the even bigger brain priority pass and not using the barrier on the challenger to try and get a kill on Poppy. And because he knew it was almost a guarantee he would try and go for that, he just let it happen and then capitalized on the, he's the one that had that combat trick. There was no combat trick on Majin's side.
Alrighty, ooh,
Chain Vest. Interesting. This is again, the information wars. You don't expect this card to be in hand or in deck for Kevin, and it could be pretty crucial in saving a trade and granting you toughness is actually pretty impactful.
Speaking of impact, that is a 5/5. That is going to be some pain. That is going to be getting chump blocked only. Poppy does not survive this. Looking at, I mean, pretty much everyone snap picks a tenor, but you give it a second to think about what you might want. Obviously, Furious Feyfolk is going to have the trigger available.
From all the regions we are.
Yeah, just picks
And
the
you get
tenor.
the tenor.
Who gets a chain vest, if anyone?
The fearsome blocker is actually kind of relevant here. Poppy's going to block the 2-1, going to survive there, and you can't block the 1-1, so that's a little bit of extra damage going through. You don't really want to block with anything else. If you take the damage here, you're going to just give the trade to Majin's side. Poppy's not buffing anything on her turn, so you're losing that value. You're going to have the tenor next turn, but overall your hand, depending on what pathways draw, that's the biggest thing I think now for Kevin.
Yeah, thinking about how much mana you have, it's going to be 7 plus 3 bank spell mana, so you can, the draw is free basically. Okay, I
Rise
want
to
to know.
Protector and the Cythria. The Cythria is a very big draw. No, only one fearsome blocker with the 5/5.
Okay. Wow. If Majinbae survives this round and gets a wide enough board, Yordles and Arms is going to wipe the board, and if anything hits, it's lethal. So if he can end this round wider by
Are you
1 or
gonna
2,
have to maybe use it defensively though?
for now you've got a
I don't
match
know
unit
if you
for
can.
unit
Yeah,
almost.
yeah. I don't know. You can even use it here. Yeah, you're right.
I think you would actually just lose to the bright steels coming down and just getting outswung. So yeah, you kind of have to just keep going wide. Lulu doesn't have to come down for defense. You have 7. You're taking you're taking 2 from impact, and then as long as you can leave a 4 attack or lower unit, you're okay.
But the
So you
pressure
don't-
from Kevin here on this attack, and because he's already at 7 HP in Majin's side, you can't really not block a lot of units. And with the barrier on the Poppy, with the buffs from the Poppy, all these trades are not going to be going in your favor, which means that you're not going to have a board to buff next turn with your Yordle and Arms.
How many good blocks can you get? 3/2 can block the 4/3, 5/5 can kill one and just eat it. Yeah, so far okay. And then here comes the awkward part, right? Where you're like, okay, well I can refill with Tenor, I can refill with Commando. Is that going to be enough units though? And you're
Yeah,
I think you want to leave one alive. You kind of have to.
Listen, you can take damage from both 3/3s, keep 2 impact units alive, and play the tenor next turn, and yeah, and
you
just
can't
swing
take
for
both
the
3/3s because the
damage.
impact kills you, right? So like you have to.
True.
You can only leave up 1 unblocked.
And it's gonna be the 5/5 obviously surviving.
Yeah.
Because I think this is it's not the game plan really for Majin now is not trying to push damage with direct damage to Nexus. It's more just the impact game plan. He has a tenor in hand that's 2 damage that he can pretty much guarantee.
Yeah. So the 5/5 lives, but the 2/3 dies. How does he get? Oh, Bandle Commando, right? Elusive gets the 1 last damage.
If there's not a sharp sight.
Sure. Which you've already seen, what, 1, maybe 2?
And these sharp sights, this, the unit surviving here doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you have blockers or not. You have to stop the impact altogether.
Okay. You're facing 4 life. You know you have 3 impact and an elusive.
Sharp sight as well for the elusive, so that's 2 extra damage pretty much guaranteed. Lulu can't do anything really on defense.
We
This
know
might be
Majinbae
Majinbae's
wins.
game.
We know Majinbae wins. Yeah.
This is it.
He took
There's
the
nothing
ultimate
you can
offensive
do
line.
for Kevin.
Oh, okay. Okay, just still going for the you don't have an elusive line. Instead of going for more impact saying, I'm just all in on you don't have an elusive. Which I think he actually knows.
Either line he loses to sharp sight, so he doesn't really care which way he does it, I think, in this case.
Yeah, okay, fair point.
Double impact from the effect, and then the elusive as well. And that's going to be Majin taking game 2 and taking this entire series. So Majinbae, we talked about his mental game going into this one,
2-0.
having to really put up a big performance, and that is exactly what he has done. 2-0 against Kevin, and is right back into it as one of the favorites to win this tournament, and right back into his groove, I think. It was a shaky first series, but he's brought it back against a very strong player in Kevin that was currently leading the group as well.
Elusive victory, definitely useful. Had the read, I mean, again, had to kind of play it anyway. You're always the next time around, but able to have, the difference in elusives. The fact that, okay, I drew 2 of my Bandle Commandos, you ate 1 with a Fleet Feather Tracker, okay, fair game, but the sharp sights got burned out, and at the end of the day, you found the face damage.
And I think Majin was just trying to prove a point by playing Yordle and Arms. We were hyping the card up. Malgai was hyping it up as well. And in that case now, we are seeing that, the card put in an impact again. Malgai is currently on screen. I think he was not expecting that one either. But Malgai, we're just trying to showcase your love for Yordle and Arms.
Yeah.
The card was played. You have to come up and give us your reaction as well. That's not the reaction I expected, but thank
That's
you,
what I
Malgai.
expected. I expected exactly that reaction.
Yeah, just doing the victory dance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
as he went to
awesome
go
to
cheer for
see.
Brazil. He's the curse, sadly.
Well, what an exciting win for Majinbae. You already touched on it, but especially after that devastating loss, this brings both of our groups incredibly close. Like it's a wide open door. Group C, we have two players that are sitting at 1-1 right now, and Group D, the same thing. So I have no idea how this is going to end. It's very, very different for both of these groups than what it was on day number 1, Panda.
I have to say, if we're following this trend, that means Alan and Shihu get their wins on the next 2 games. So I am completely on board with that. Let's keep this trend going. Complete parity, and then that means the last games of these groups will be extra exciting. So I think it's great for the storylines, for the excitement of the groups in general.
Well, let's go ahead and pull up those standings so you can get a visual of what we're looking at. 4 players sitting at 1-1 right now. And yeah, I really think that we could see a 4-way tie in both groups with everybody sitting at 1-1. That means that the last games, the last round, Freak, are gonna matter so much.
And I'm glad we're getting some vengeance for the Asia qualifiers as well, considering none of the Asia qualified players made it through yesterday. The fact that Yamato and Odyssey are both undefeated in their groups. Sure, only 1 match so far, but it's good to see that, it's not just, okay, the Americas winning everything and Asia getting, unfortunately kind of dumpstered. I'm glad we have, like, a lot of that script flipped so far.
Yeah, definitely seeing a lot of diversity in the players so far that potentially could be making it through to the final day. But we are now at the halfway point where we've got 6 matches under our belt and 6 more to go. We're going to be taking a short break, and when we come back, match number 7.